Members, we have a quorum. I call to order the meeting of the Subcommittee on Promoting the Development of Hong Kong into an International Education Hub. Let me first introduce the representatives for the administration. We have Mr. Jeff C., Undersecretary for Education, Ms. Jerry G., Principal Assistant Secretary for Education, Higher Education, Mr. Casper, Principal Assistant Secretary for Education, Further Education, and Mr. Louis Leung, Deputy Secretary General of the UGC University Grants Committee. At the last meeting, the subcommittee members agreed that we should invite public submissions and request that the research office of the Secretariat prepare a research report. On the invitation of public submissions, the subcommittee has posted a notice on the LegCo website and invited, in particular, universities, institutions, and organizations to provide comments on the development of Hong Kong into an international education hub. The Secretariat has received 10 submissions, and on the 20th of September, along with LC papers number CB-3680/2024 and 681/2024, the submissions have been sent to members for reference. On the research report, the research office proposes to do a study into the education system in the UK and Australia because they are both international education hubs. The skeleton of the study has been sent to members on 8th of October. The Secretariat did not receive any comments from members, so I have instructed the research office to prepare the report in accordance with the skeleton. Now, on agenda item number 1, overview of policy initiatives for building Hong Kong as an international post-secondary education hub. I remind members that in accordance with Rule 83A of the Rules of Procedure, members should disclose the nature of any direct or indirect pecuniary interests relating to the item under discussion before they speak on the item. I now ask members to press the request to speak button to indicate your intention to speak. Under Secretary, when you're ready, please give your presentation. Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair, members. I would like to thank members for giving us valuable comments all along on how to develop Hong Kong into an international education hub. In this meeting and the following meetings, we will perhaps have in future some representatives from universities and institutions so that we can all put our heads together to see how we can better develop Hong Kong as an international post-secondary education hub. I will first play a 3-minute clip. It is in Cantonese, the one that we're going to play, but we also have English and Putonghua versions available. When we are promoting to the outside how we are going to develop Hong Kong into an international education hub, we will play the relevant clips. So perhaps I'll first play this clip. Hong Kong is committed to developing into an international education hub, attracting talents of different backgrounds and fields from all over the world. Vibrant, cosmopolitan Hong Kong, strategically located, boasts natural beauty and an environment conducive to developing innovation and technology. A mix of East meets West, traditional and modern, a wide range of delicacies, good vibes day and night. Hong Kong radiates a unique charm. The government provides 12 years of free education to nurture biliterate talent. There are schools operated by organizations of different cultural and religious background. The thriving international school sector meets the demand of non-local families coming for work or investment. Hong Kong is the only city with 5 universities in the world's top 100. Universities provide a first-class research environment that facilitates scholars' pursuit of breakthroughs. About 70% of the university's research projects have been rated as internationally excellent or above by international experts. Subdegree and degree programs, vocational and professional education and training create more flexible articulation pathways. The government actively encourages universities to offer more STEAM-related courses to expand the pool of INT talents and create further impetus for growth. The government is developing the Northern Metropolis University Town and encouraging tertiary institutions to strengthen cooperation with mainland and foreign institutions. As an East meets West Center for International Cultural Exchange, Hong Kong also has one of Asia's leading institutions in performing arts to provide students with a unique experience of being immersed in Chinese and foreign cultures and arts. Hong Kong is close to the Great Mainland Market and other Asian countries. Hong Kong's tertiary education is in line with international standards in terms of the medium of instruction, further study, and career prospects. The government has set up various scholarship programs, such as the Belt and Road Scholarship to benefit non-local students. Over the years, universities in Hong Kong and the mainland have established academic exchange programs which allow teachers and students to explore and seize abundant opportunities for development. The government has also relaxed the immigration arrangements for non-local graduates, extended the limit of stay to facilitate them working in Hong Kong. The government has also increased the quota for non-local students in publicly funded tertiary institutions. Hong Kong's post-secondary institutions enjoy autonomy, academic freedom, good governance, and combined Chinese culture and international perspective. Through a variety of educational support, Hong Kong supports children of talents admitted to Hong Kong through various talent admission schemes to attend local schools, an education hub, and a cradle of talent. As the clip shows, Hong Kong is committed to developing Hong Kong into an international education hub. We have always been trying to make contributions to the country's development in terms of education, GBA, and the National 14th Five-Year Plan. The government's goal is to leverage on our advantages to attract talents from mainland and overseas and broaden international horizons of students, as well as create an impetus for growth and make contributions to the development of the country. In the policy address announced on 16th of October, it is said that we should deepen reforms and develop a study in Hong Kong brand and continue to develop Hong Kong into an international education hub. We have also been doing world-class research. We have diverse research subjects. We have also been helping non-local students and non-local students. We have a diverse tertiary education sector. We have self-financing and public education sectors which are both developing. And we are also promoting VPAT, vocational and professional education and training. We want to base our system on universities, leverage on our advantages, and establish collaboration with different institutions in the mainland and overseas. The government has a number of initiatives, as well as some new initiatives in the policy address to enhance collaboration and communication with different institutions to collaborate better, as well as tell better stories of Hong Kong. I will not talk about the details today. We will continue to enhance cooperation, publicity, establishment of the Study in Hong Kong brand, and provide more diverse experiences for non-local students. If necessary, we will amend the policies in order to keep abreast with the times, seize the new opportunities in order to develop Hong Kong into an international education hub. That's it for my presentation today, Chair. I will gladly take members' questions now. Thank you. Mr. Lam Chen Sing, I'll assign a 5-minute time limit. Excuse me. I will read out the order in which members are going to speak. Excuse me. Mr. Lam Chen Sing, Mrs. Regina Ip, Dr. Chow Man Kong, Professor William Wong, Mr. Chu Kwok Keng, myself, Ms. Lillian Kwok, and Professor Priscilla Leung. Mr. Lam Chen Sing, you are the first one to speak. Thank you, Chair. In the policy address, there are many new initiatives that would support Hong Kong in becoming an international education hub. These are also set out in the paper. One of them is to establish the Committee on Education, Technology, and Talents. The work is diverse. It would be to pool talents, attract talents, cultivate talents. We want to have international talents coming to Hong Kong. This is very important in developing Hong Kong into an international education hub. I want to know more about the work of the committee. The LWB also has a Hong Kong Talent Engage, whose work also involves promoting to different parts of the world, attracting talents from different places to come to Hong Kong to work and to study. And we also have various talent admission schemes, including the tech test. Is there any overlap in the work of the committee and the work of the different bureaus? Because we have various committees set up, but often we have observed there is some sort of overlap between the different committees' scope of review. Is it possible for you to identify whether there is any overlap with the work of the Hong Kong Talent Engage? Next, on hostels, you said you would encourage the market to convert hotels and other commercial buildings into student hostels. You also had hotels converted to youth hostels before. They were quite popular during the pandemic, but after the pandemic, hotels and commercial buildings wish to go back to business. They are less willing to have those converted to student hostels. Would you provide hotels or commercial buildings with, or their owners with, incentives to convert their buildings into hostels? That's my second question. On developing Hong Kong into an international education hub, we should not have people with fake qualifications. And I know the government has been working hard on this, and we are to work with mainland authorities on this. Often we found the students who have fake qualifications to be from the mainland, but once we have more students from other Southeast Asian countries, if they have fake qualifications, would it be hard for you to detect such? Would you work with the relevant governments and educational authorities to combat such fake qualifications? Thank you. Undersecretary, thank you for the 3 questions. On the establishment of the Committee on Education, Technology, and Talents, the reason for this is in the 3rd plenary session of the 20th CPC Central Committee, the resolution adopted said we need to modernize education, and this is key to developing science and technology in the country. We need talents to support this, and we need education to nurture such talents. So these 3 aspects, education, talents, and technology, are closely interrelated. And we do have the Hong Kong Talent Engage under the LWB that would attract talents. But what we're talking about, for example, today with developing Hong Kong into an international education hub, we need to integrate such, and with the leadership of the Commission being the Chief Secretary for Administration, we should be able to prevent, as you mentioned, any overlap in work. We can have clearer distinction in the division of work, and we can have better coordination in our work. That is the goal. As for hostels, for institutions, if they want to have more non-local students, they need to make sure they have the appropriate number of hostel places to accommodate these non-local students. For institutions, some institutions, they are working with private operators to provide such hostel places. They have also worked with some building owners to convert some of the spaces to become hostels. But with the increase in the number of non-local students, we need to make sure there are more hostel facilities. And before we have the Hostel Development Fund amounting to $103 million, and up to 2027, we would have an additional 13,500 hostel places. But we encourage the private sector on a self-financing basis develop more hostel projects. Apart from converting hotels, we do encourage conversion of commercial buildings as well to increase the number of hostel places.
The government also considers market demand in providing new land parcels for market players to build new student hostels. So we take this multi-pronged approach to boosting the supply of hostel places. Now, on fake academic qualifications, as the chief executive, the chief secretary, and the deputy chief executive said on other occasions, forging or the furnishing of fake qualifications is a serious offense. We work with universities. We take a zero-tolerance approach to this matter. We follow up on such cases. If offenses are involved, we get law enforcement agencies involved. There are recent court rulings. We hope that will create a deterrent effect. And once again, we call on people not to break the law. If forged academic qualifications are proved, the universities involved will cancel the places of such people, and the people involved will be held liable. Mrs. Regina Ip. Chairman, just a brief question. This subcommittee is on promoting the development of Hong Kong into an international education hub. But I'm looking at the papers. It's about building Hong Kong as an international post-secondary education hub. So an education hub should cover secondary schools as well. We have 40 or 50 secondary schools, and then the French International School has 4 campuses. We also have DSS, or Direct Subsidy Scheme schools, and we also have the International Baccalaureate. We have in fact, the highest share of top scorers under the IB scheme in Hong Kong. My mainland friends told me they want to send their kids to these schools. And we also have some great universities. So, by education hub, are we also covering secondary schools? That matters for attracting investments and talent as well. Undersecretary, you mentioned diversified education pathways. You also mentioned international schools. I just want a yes or no answer. I thank Mrs. Ip for her question. The government wants to turn Hong Kong into an international education hub. The focus is on post-secondary education. And we don't have any plan to extend the coverage to secondary and primary schools. But your clip mentioned secondary schools. Chairman, we play this clip to the local audience and an outside audience. We want to give people a better idea of Hong Kong's education landscape. But Mrs. Ip has a point. We also have international schools. Those schools help attract outside investments and talent. The people who see this clip, even if they have no plans to pursue college education here, may get a better idea of our education here. Now, people can apply under the Top Talent Pass scheme. They can come here and be a member of the local community. That clip will give them a better idea of our education system. Chairman, one comment. Our education system has many strengths, but we have to put things in perspective. We are doing something well. We offer quality education. We're not about making money. Higher education hubs elsewhere, when you look at Peking University, Tsinghua University, or in Boston, those places did not set up schools to make money. Now, tutorial schools were just about making money. But for our higher education, some disciplines are less popular than others, and we just asked those programs that would be putting the cart before the horse. Let's look at Princeton University. They don't focus on engineering. Their focus instead is on mathematics, pure sciences, and history. Their pillars are mathematics and history, the humanities, and the basic sciences. They don't just ask a program because enrollment levels are low. We have to stick to this principle. We want quality, academic freedom. We don't want politicization. We want both teaching and research, and then we can be an education hub. This should not be about making money. Can the government confirm this principle? We cannot put the cart before the horse. Undersecretary. We note Mrs. Lip's point. We agree with her. Universities are supposed to offer all-round education. We value the nurturing of specialized kinds of talent. Universities are not supposed to be a business undertaking. Those institutions are supposed to be about nurturing talent. Education is about building character, forging character. A scientist needs an education not just in the sciences, but also in other areas before they can become an outstanding scientist. Dr. Chow Man Kong. Thank you, Chairman. We just had this clip. If you don't mind, that clip is just an overview of Hong Kong. The chief executive made this clear in his policy address. International Education Hub. The focus is just about tertiary education. The immigration ordinance says non-local students cannot come here for secondary schools unless they are here under different immigrant admission schemes. So you have to either rename your video or you make a different video. Now, I have a point to make about this particular award scheme, Hong Kong Future Talent Scholarship Scheme for Advanced Studies. There are 7 different areas. But then in the 2022 policy address, there was a goal about 60% of the programs being related to the 8 centers. So can we get the government to clarify this point? I have another point. It's about the study in Hong Kong brand. I put that proposal to the government. But it's just a brand. I looked at the clip and then I wondered, does the government have any idea what study in Hong Kong mean? Can we have a task force dedicated to this task? As another member said, this should not be a business. We should be nurturing talent, and we should be projecting China's soft power. So maybe we can take a page from IDP Australia or the British Council. They have official or semi-official bodies promoting the work. So first, we have to get a clear idea of this study in Hong Kong brand. We need a dedicated team on that work. Undersecretary. On that clip, we considered our target audience in making that video. We showed members the Cantonese version. We have multiple versions of that clip. We interviewed non-local students in Hong Kong. They're from different parts of the world. We interviewed them on their thoughts about education in Hong Kong. There's a 1-minute version, and that's an announcement in the public interest. In late June, early July this year, we put out that API. We need community-wide support in our work to turn Hong Kong into an international education hub. We want the public to have a better idea of what we do. We don't go into the specific strengths of each university in that clip. We give people an overview through that clip. I agree with Dr. Chow. We give people an overview of Hong Kong's education. We want people to get a basic idea of our education. We want to arouse their interest first. Now, on the PA, that particular scholarship scheme, Hong Kong Future Talent Scholarship, now we will take into account the 8 centers and also the experience we had in the past. And then we come up with the priority areas that will serve Hong Kong. And then we will invite universities to propose programs to be included. So this is a taught postgraduate program. This will cover INT, creative industries, law, intellectual property. They correspond to our development in terms of the 8 centers. So we will nurture the top-notch talent to meet Hong Kong's future need. We also encourage universities to offer such programs. Dr. Chow mentioned outbound publicity. Now we have economic and trade offices in different places. We also have the mainland offices. We want to make good use of the existing manpower. Those offices help the Education Bureau with its publicity efforts. The Secretary for Education invited local universities to join her on education expos in different places and publicity events to promote this study in Hong Kong brand. Chairman, one comment. I looked at that video and listened to the Undersecretary's reply. I have yet to see a concept, a framework. So let's work together on this. Thank you. Undersecretary, nothing to add? That's all. Thank you. Professor William Wong. Thank you, Chairman. I wasn't going to ask a question, but then that clip, I want to share my thoughts on international schools. Are we able to attract international students or good students because of international schools? We're not admitting many students from local international schools. So I'm afraid that clip might be slightly misleading. Now I turn to my other question. I want to make a declaration. I'm a professor with the Chinese University of Hong Kong. For many years, we have been promoting this drive to set up campuses in the mainland. So a single university, but 2 or more campuses. We want to let our students take classes on both the local campus and the mainland campus. But then there are student visa issues. Sure, visas fall outside the scope of the EDB, but here we want to see a greater effort from the EDB because we have run into a problem. Now, my second point. Now we're supporting universities on their effort to set up GBA campuses. Now we're trying to promote universities of applied sciences. Those UASs should also set up a campus in the GBA. The paper says there will be more conferences and exhibitions on education in Hong Kong. Can we also hold more academic and research conferences? Technological research matters for higher education institutions, so these are some areas I want to raise.
Undersecretary, thank you, member, for the questions. For the Chinese University of Hong Kong Shenzhen campus, it is the 10th year anniversary this year of the campus. It's not long, but it is a milestone, and it is now a very famous institution in the Greater Bay Area. I understand the student numbers are very, very promising. So, China or universities in Hong Kong setting up mainland campuses do have good prospects, it seems. And this is because we have a reputation here. And this is also very important in our development into an international education hub. Regarding the 2+2 arrangement suggested, oh no, I'm not talking about the 2+2 arrangement. So the students are still students of the campuses. It's just that they can take some courses in, say, the local campus here in Hong Kong for the mainland students, or Hong Kong students can take certain courses in the mainland campus. We are trying to encourage this if this is possible because it can facilitate exchanges. But the problem is people do not have the visas, or no visa arrangement is available for this right now. Well, I would suggest that perhaps in the UGC meetings in future, I will try to get more information from the Chinese University of Hong Kong. Right now, I understand that there are different exchange arrangements implemented by different universities. If it has something to do with visa arrangements, we will have to liaise with the relevant department to see what we can do about it. For the universities of applied sciences, we now have the first UAS, that is the Hong Kong Metropolitan University. Regarding whether the university has a plan to set up a campus in the mainland, it would depend on the wishes of the university. It would depend on whether they have the right resources, whether they can identify the right location to set up a mainland campus. I'll leave it for the university to decide. As for the hosting of academic and research conferences, I understand that local institutions are already doing this. I know that in the next month, the University of Hong Kong has a conference in culture and history. And such academic conferences are definitely supported by the UGC. As for what research conferences to host, I think it would depend on the universities. They actually have many alliances, as I know the University of Hong Kong has participated in the U21 Alliance and the Alliance of, say, Belt and Road country universities, and they can have exchanges under such frameworks. Well, Professor William Wong, can you speak in your second round? All right, thank you. Mr. Chu Kwok-keung, thank you. We talked earlier in the last council meeting about how to support the talents admitted, and we have seen people exploiting loopholes such as making use of examinations or studying in Hong Kong to immigrate to Hong Kong. So we are to review the definition of local students in future. Are there any preliminary ideas in relation to how the definition should be changed? How many years of study they should have before they are classified as local students? And will there be a cap? Are there any follow-up actions to be taken? Lastly, on the combating of the use of fake academic qualifications, would the administration consider enhancing the functions of the HKCA AVQ so that they can also vet the qualifications of overseas and mainland universities? So, Undersecretary, thank you. As said in the motion debate in last Wednesday's council meeting, we do note members' concerns. We also note the discussions in society in relation to this. As Mr. Chu mentioned, we will review for tertiary institutions admission of students, the definition of local students. We have been following up on this, and we will continue to follow up on this. As for the use of fake academic qualifications, Mr. Lam Chun Sing also asked about this. Mr. Chu said specifically how we can enhance the HKCAA VQ, that is Hong Kong Council for Accreditation of Academic and Vocational Qualifications functions. For different institutions, they have different admission criteria. The HKCAA VQ can do something about consulting institutions, and they can provide advice to the academic institutions. But right now, we have to understand this. Universities are very experienced in admitting students, and they also have a review mechanism in place, and that's how we have been able to identify the use of fake academic qualifications. They actually found out about these cases themselves through such mechanism. So they have been asking students to provide original copies when they report for school, and there will be a vetting process involved. We do note that there are some intermediaries that are acting maliciously. Based on past experience, we will analyze these past cases so as to determine how we can follow up on these. And in fact, these unscrupulous intermediaries, we have been working with the mainland authorities to follow up on how to catch them, because the higher education institutions cannot allow for this to go on. And that's it from me. Thank you. Next to speak would be me. I have noted recent media reports that the UGC has reserved $20 million to promote Hong Kong's development into an international education hub. How is the UGC going to go about doing this? If the UGC is to participate in an international education expo, it does not make much sense. How is that going to work? Also, I want to ask if the government plans to set up an academic qualification vetting platform like what they have in the mainland. Right now, we do not have this. And if we are to find out about such in different institutions, the administrative costs can get quite high. Thank you. Thank you. When you're talking about the 20 million in funding, it would be in the 2022-25. We have given $204.7 million to UGC, HUCUM, Heads of Universities Committee, Standing Committee on Internationalization, to publicize their student admission activities. It would also involve collaborating with different education institutions and taking part in education expos. The aim is to attract more non-local students to study in Hong Kong. On a university level, with the HUCUM SCI, we have been able to provide to them some funding to promote to Belt and Road countries so that more students of these countries would come to Hong Kong. We have also been promoting more of the scholarship scheme for the students from these countries on the use of fake or forged academic qualifications. We know that for different universities, they have different student admission criteria and process. And regarding experience, for different institutions, because they may have different criteria and it may also vary between different courses. So we think it is more appropriate to leave it to the universities. But we emphasize this: if there is misconduct in the process that is found, universities should follow up on this, and if there is anything illegal, universities must refer such behavior to law enforcement agencies such as forged instruments, the use of forged instruments, and these students should be expelled. They should also be punished legally and perhaps criminally. Thank you. Miss Lillian Kwok. Oh, excuse me. Well, I think the UGC representative has something to say. The speaker's microphone is not on. Please speak into the microphone. Oh, it is now on. Thank you. Chair. In relation to what the Undersecretary said, I have some information to add. In relation to HUCOM SCI, the funding given to them is to promote and to take part in expos. It's not about us hosting the expos. We are just taking part. And there are some specific expos that we would attend. For example, this year we went to Australia for Asia Pacific. We also went to one in the Americas. We also went to one in Europe. For example, in September we went to France for this. The $20 million would be 3 years, so each year it would be $6 million, and taking part in the expo it would involve $2 million odd. We would set up Hong Kong pavilions in the expos to outline our achievements so far. We have partners from different universities. We have also overseas educators, and we will communicate, for example, with parents on the schools. If possible, we will also hold evening banquets because we would like to seize the opportunities to forge some partnerships with overseas education institutions. For example, last time we were in France, we were able to meet with different university partner representatives. In fact, we now have 2,600 odd student exchange agreements. We have been trying to forge more of that in order to develop Hong Kong into an international education hub, and post-secondary education in particular should be international, so we will continue to work on this. And we will also have some roadshows for joint student admission. We have gone to India this year, and last year we went to Vietnam. We didn't go many times. It would just be 1 to 2 times per year because we have limited resources. But we want to seize the opportunities to develop emerging markets. We have some very mature markets such as South Korea, and instead we want to go to the emerging markets to attract more students of these countries to come to Hong Kong. And in future, we not only want to have local students going global, we want to have more overseas students coming to Hong Kong to see how good the education system is on forged or fake academic qualifications. As Mr. Tang said, we have been communicating with universities. We have in the mainland a center that can vet applications of mainland students. In fact, they can vet their qualifications of mainland students that claim that they have obtained overseas. I think right now they're exploiting loopholes here, these students making use of academic qualifications, because before we would require communication with the specific schools, and many of such correspondence currently take place on email. Now we will seek direct confirmation from universities. If there are any doubts, we will try to err on caution to have the student meet with us on an interview panel if we find the appearance of a student to be somewhat different, and that is how we can identify such cases. Thank you.
Now I will let other members speak for the first round because I do have a follow-up question. It's about how those universities work with the government. Now we first turn to Ms. Lillian Kwok. Thank you. Now, one comment about the fake qualifications that was covered just then. Now, we cover the China Higher Education Verification website. Now, we do have the Qualifications Framework Council. People can have their overseas qualifications verified through this council, so that's one place people can look at. Now, I want to turn to self-financing higher education institutions. We want to become an international education hub. But those self-financing institutions can take in only 10% non-local students. Now, the HKMU has a higher cap, but then let's bear in mind that we want both academic and vocational education. Look at the mainland, look at ASEAN. They have many vocational schools. People there get a sub-degree qualification. So can we also relax the rules about admitting non-local students for self-financing higher education institutions so that we can bring in VPAT talent? We can offer more pathways for people. Those people may want to work here. As Mrs. Regina Ip said, by going international, we're not just focusing on tertiary education. We want to look at secondary schools, primary schools, and kindergartens. There's keen demand. People come here under talent admission schemes. They want to bring along their children, but they're having a hard time because we don't have enough international schools. Have we assessed our future demand? We want to bring in talent. We need schools to go hand in hand. Can we have a sense or adjustments to the split of local public schools, local private schools, and international schools? Now, I raised a point about promoting our DSC exams in the international community. Those qualifications are recognized elsewhere. The mainland accepts DSC results. Let's look at Vietnam, Thailand, Malaysia, even in Japan. Those people come here, take our DSC exam. They prepare on their own. So, does the government have any plan about promoting DSC overseas? Now, if we do open up our primary and secondary schools, we will need to review our systems. We lack a guardianship system. We have yet to update our laws on guardianships. So how do we let overseas students study in our primary and secondary schools? That's something for the government to consider. Now, we are focusing on tertiary education here, but since the member has raised her question, so let's see if the Undersecretary can offer a response. Now, on getting the Qualifications Framework Secretariat to help us, our tertiary institutions do ask the degree awarding institutions to provide proof of study. The verification process is similar. Whichever party requests that verification, it's mostly the same. At the end of the day, it's the universities that admit the students. It's better to let the universities do this. On self-financing higher institutions, I believe the member refers to the admission of mainland Macau and Taiwan students. Those institutions face a cap. We have 6 such higher education institutions. They have the approval from the Ministry of Education. They can admit those MMT students. 3 such institutions have a cap of 20%. The other 3 are subject to a 10% cap. We note the comments on this point. We have been in touch with the MOE. We've been exchanging views on this matter. For these 6 local self-financing higher education institutions, their postgraduate programs are not subject to this cap. The cap applies to students from the mainland, Macau, and Taiwan only. Admission of overseas students is allowed. Sorry, Chairman. I want to quickly respond to another point from Ms. Kwok. We want to become an IEH with a focus on tertiary education. We don't have any plan to extend that coverage to primary and secondary schools yet. More support measures are needed when we want to bring in non-local secondary and primary school students. Minors are involved. Those children come here without parents. When that happens, we have to bear in mind the well-being of such students. This means care, more support, safeguards that covers accommodation, counseling, guardians, as Ms. Kwok noted. That's how we can look after the needs of those students in different areas. Our international schools are for the children of people who are here because of work or other reasons. International schools cater to the needs of those expat families. Over the past 2 years, we have noted growing demand for places at international schools. That's why, as the Education Bureau is now working on the school allocation exercise, we are putting forward 2 vacant school premises for interested school sponsoring bodies. There will be roughly 1,000 such school places to be offered. Professor Priscilla Leung. Chairman, I support the setting up of this committee on education, science and technology, and this will be chaired by the Chief Secretary. This committee on education, technology and talent to be led by a Secretary of Development coordinating across departments will achieve great results. I would like to see a committee of interdisciplinary talent. Indeed, we should start by focusing on tertiary education in our effort. For this study in Hong Kong brand, of course, quality matters. We have 5 of the world's top 100 universities. I would like to see the 6th one. We need to retain the talent that we manage to attract here. Once the talent is here, we need support measures. I went on 3 exchange programs, and that made me what I am today. I stayed with 10 US families in different parts of the US. I also went on an exchange in France. I stayed with 2 families with different politics, and then I also stayed in Beijing. I stayed with local families. I stayed with people living in those hutongs. I got to know the local people. So there is this emotional attachment with those places. And then I have my aspirations, so I decided to return to my home country after visiting the US and France. But I got a deeper understanding of those foreign countries. I get the challenges with getting non-local students for secondary schools. We talked about boarding schools, etc. But there are challenges for now. But let's turn to universities. I can let international students stay with me as a homestay arrangement. Now, I want to declare an interest. I teach at the City University of Hong Kong. I've had international students from Western countries, but also Kazakhstan. We can look beyond Asia. There was a TV documentary from yesterday. In Greece and Egypt, Mandarin is offered as an elective at primary and secondary school levels. There are people who went on exchange programs, and then when those countries were on the brink of bankruptcy, those people played a role. We have to make a difference. There are people who are committed and they are able people. If we can keep those people, then we go a long way towards improving the ties between Hong Kong and whatever the home country those people are. Early in my career, I worked at joint ventures. So my question is, for university students, can we encourage homestay arrangements? We already have 5 of the world's top 100 universities. Can the government do its part as well? We want to promote the silver economy. Can we find some good families that will take in international students? We start there, and then we can consider extending the arrangement to secondary schools. Undersecretary. Now, on homestay arrangements, we gave thought to this idea. But then in Hong Kong, homes tend to be smaller. The per capita living space in Hong Kong is smaller than other places, but we're not against this idea. If this works for some families, we can talk to universities to see if this works. We're taking a multi-pronged approach. We're trying to have more hostels because we want to admit more non-local students. That means we need better support in terms of hostels. If host families can take in international students, that's one way to increase the supply of hostels. Those international students will get a better sense of our local culture. Chairman, one comment. Now, we're not saying students stay with the family for an entire term. We want to mobilize the silver-haired group. We don't have to rush to the idea of a hostel, we should make the start. The government should take the lead. So that's my perspective. I'm not saying host families should replace hostels. We should be giving non-local students experience of the local community, give them a sense of home. Thank you.
Undersecretary, we do note the member suggestions. Thank you. Mr. Dennis Leung. Thank you, Chair. Today, our topic is building Hong Kong as an international post-secondary education hub. We have 5 of Hong Kong's universities in the world's top 100. In order to really have talents from different places in the world come to Hong Kong, we really need to develop innovation and technology a bit more. We must make progress, otherwise we would be left behind because other countries are also making advances. Are there any KPIs set in relation to international rankings of Hong Kong institutions so that the institutions would do better? And can we have more overseas scholars or experts come to Hong Kong? Are there any KPIs? On some ROGC projects, we really have to think about how the projects can make sure we are specializing in research subjects. Right now, the subjects often bring about benefits only for other places. Can we have the research foci to be more China specific so that we can have overseas academics coming to Hong Kong doing research? We shouldn't only give money to overseas research institutions because that would only benefit other places, making them places for research. Also, on alliance to be set up for UASs, right now there's only 1 university. In future, there should be 3 of them. How can we provide better coordination for the setting up of the alliance? It shouldn't only be a slogan. It should be about resource allocation, the positioning of the alliance and the governance so that we can really make the institutions world class. On hostels, we have been talking for, say, 2 years that we do not have enough hostel places, and we're still leaving it to the universities to decide. If we do not have the appropriate facilities, how can we attract non-local students to come to Hong Kong and establish a study in Hong Kong brand? This is very important. On the training of INT and research talents, in order to retain them after they graduate, we really need to provide the right support to them. We have different initiatives, but there is some overlapping. How can we make sure there is better coordination to provide comprehensive support to these graduates so that they can really realize their vision of developing in Hong Kong? Thank you. Undersecretary, thank you for the questions. Member, as for research and development in universities, some universities excel in certain areas and they would often have leading scholars, leading teams in research and development. Often they would have an elite scholar leading a particular team. Once we have recruited more non-local students in recent years, the universities have allocated more resources to engage more elite scholars such as guest speakers, guest lecturers, and so on. In 2019-20 to 2023-24, between these 4 academic years, for UGC institutions, the number of scholars that has really increased from 2,048 to 2,486. So we have really seen an increase in the number of overseas scholars, leading scholars engaged. Whether leading scholars will actually come to universities would depend on the support and facilities provided by the university specifically. And a few days ago, I read an article written by Mrs. Regina Ip about a University of Hong Kong professor, and saying that if we are to engage these elite scholars, the university has done a lot specifically to provide the right support to scholars, and this is never an easy task. In fact, with the elite scholars coming here, they not only bring themselves here, they would bring about connections, they would bring about some very top-notch, world-class projects that are to be conducted in Hong Kong. For the alliance of the UASs, it is to be established next month. Right now, we have only one UAS in the alliance. In future, we will go to the mainland and overseas to promote the alliance a bit more. We will also refer to the successful experiences elsewhere in relation to developing alliance of UASs so that we can bring such experience to use in Hong Kong. As for other ancillary facilities such as hostels and whatnot, there's always more to do. We understand what the members said. As for FEPAT, I think we can discuss the item in detail in future meetings in order to better develop FEPAT. Indeed, we do have an item for discussion in future that will discuss FEPAT. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Lau. Or Mr. Leung. Thank you. In relation to how we can do better for Hong Kong in 2022 for Research Grants Council, we have injected $150 million to set up a program for dedicated research. And before, universities would have scholars propose topics and then they would get funding afterwards. The process is inverted under the program. We have already designated 5 study areas for the long-term benefit of Hong Kong. For example, to make Hong Kong into a leading city in the Greater Bay Area for integrated circuit and scientific development. It is about how we can make better use of our resources in universities to help bring about research that would benefit the development of Hong Kong. So we are making use of the scholars' expertise, but then we are also ensuring the research projects would have resources pooled, and these will in future benefit Hong Kong. All right, Mr. Leung is the Deputy Secretary General of the UGC. All right, last to speak for the first round, Mr. Benson Look. Thank you, Chair. If we are to make Hong Kong into an international education hub and establish a study in Hong Kong brand, there are a host of factors that we need to consider. One would be accommodation for students, that is hostels. In 2018, the government has given $10.3 billion to the Hostel Development Fund to provide to 6 universities or academic institutions to provide an additional 13,500 places. And according to paragraph 13 of the paper, there is a pilot scheme to have hotels and commercial buildings converted to provide hostels places. Well, paragraph 15. With the property prices becoming more affordable now, it is potentially possible to have universities invest in buildings to have more student accommodation. So is this a pivot in the policy focus? Before, it is more about funding publicly to provide such facilities. Now there is more partnership with the private sector to provide hostel facilities. My second question relates to non-local students. We are taking a gradual approach to attract more non-local students. So I want to ask, will this provision of hostel facilities tie in with our gradual recruitment of non-local students? Some institutions have already used up the 40% quota, but many of such students are staying in private accommodation and the rents are more expensive. So I want to ask if it is possible to tie in better with the provision of hostel facilities and the attraction of non-local students. For non-local students coming to study in Hong Kong, often they would only be able to stay in accommodation for a number of years. Before, for local students, for 4 years study, they would be allowed to stay, say, 2 years in hostels or student accommodation. Would we be able to provide some sort of guarantee to non-local students like this? Thank you. Undersecretary. The Hostel Development Fund. From what I remember before, when we were trying to seek support from members in terms of funding, we were asked whether there are enough locations to provide the 10,000 odd places. In fact, we have the funding proposal. Then, before that, we already have some viable sites in mind. And now, in universities or in the vicinity of campuses, that is the lower hanging fruits. We have already pretty much got most of them. If we are to have more hostel places, we have to be more innovative. We have to think about how to perhaps relax certain restrictions to encourage market input or input from the private sector in taking forward hostel development projects. We have been working with the Development Bureau closely on this. We hope that in the first half of next year we will have a pilot scheme. The thing is, right now, for buildings, because student hostels are supposed to be residential in nature, if we are to convert commercial buildings into student hostels without any alterations, it would still exceed the gross floor area restriction. So right now, we are trying to attract private sector input to convert commercial buildings into hostels. But due to the relevant statutory requirements, it is somewhat difficult. We hope that through interdepartmental collaboration, we can have something more flexible and we can relax the relevant restrictions. We also have the development facilitating projects office of the Development Bureau that will provide one-stop services, the Development Projects Facilitation Office that can help expedite this initiative. As for the gradual approach to increase the number of non-local students, provision of hostel facilities is one part of it. And in fact, for the education facilities as well as the team of lecturers and researchers, these are also very important, whether we have enough professors to teach or lead research projects. These are also very important in the initiative to increase the number of non-local students. We need to make sure universities have the right facilities for that, and we shouldn't compromise the quality of education in this.
As to the policy on hostels for non-local students, this depends on the supply of hostel places. We need the hostels, and then we work with universities to see if we can come up with a policy. Even with the policy, there may be constraints, and that may not be where we want to be. Undersecretary. Mr. Leung. Now, the $10.3 billion, that's for the Hostel Development Fund. That's for non-local students enrolled in UGC-funded programs. Now, some figures. Right now, we have 64,000 non-local students in higher education programs. UGC-funded places make up 23,100 places. So you have 40,000 non-local students. They are in master's programs at self-financing higher education institutions. The Hostel Development Fund looks after UGC-funded places. But as we expand our capacity, more non-local students come here. We have to find a way to look after students at self-financing higher institutions. The policy intent is that we want to look after not just students in UGC-funded programs. We want better support for students. Now, on a guaranteed minimum stay for students at hostels, as the Undersecretary said, this depends on the available hospital places. At the 8 UGC-funded universities, there are guaranteed stays. At the CityU, Lingnan University, and HKUST, students get 2 years of stay. As for the other 5 universities, the minimum stay is 1 year. This is a good practice. A student arriving here is maybe 18, 19. They need time to familiarize themselves with Hong Kong. Housing is a crucial matter. So we emphasize this point with universities. They have to look after the needs of their students. Universities now provide information for their non-local students about signing rental agreements. Those are complex matters. Universities can help out by providing information. Now, government funding plays a part. Now, with a capable government, we also have to tap into the market. Now, this is a matter for self-financing higher institutions, and they can talk to the Education Bureau about that. Now, 5 minutes for each member. We are moving to the second round. Mrs. Regina Ip. Chairman, I want to comment on that clip. I agree with Dr. Chow Meng Kong and Professor William Wong's point. This clip leaves much to be desired, and maybe this clip was made months ago. Now we have a new policy under the policy address. We need a more focused clip. We have top-notch research universities, CUHK, Hong Kong U, HKUST. We also have a University of Applied Sciences. We also have self-financing tertiary institutions. We have great secondary schools and international schools. Those are the support available. We also have the GPA advantage. Under Secretary, you need a more up-to-date video. This clip is too generic. It's just so-so. The Undersecretary has a point. Our immigration department does not issue student visas to secondary or primary school students. They cannot come here without their parents. But then, for people on talent admission schemes or they're here on the CIES, the people can bring along their children. In that case, the immigration department does issue student visas. It's important to have good schools, secondary schools and primary schools when we want to attract investments. That's something we have to tell the world. So you need a better video. Now, one comment from me. For minors who are here with their parents who come here under talent admission schemes, they are on dependent visas. So those are not student visas. We do not have student visas for secondary schools. Minors can only come here with their families. Undersecretary. Thank you. Mrs. Ip has a point. This video was made January or February this year. The clip was released in March. As Mr. Leung was saying, we visited an education event in Australia. We had the Hong Kong Pavilion there. We wanted to promote Hong Kong's education at that Australian event. We also issued a pamphlet, also in March this year, to tell people about Hong Kong's education landscape. Now there are new measures under the latest policy address. We can now promote the study in Hong Kong brand with better focus. We note Mrs. Ip's comment. We will update our publicity materials by producing a better clip. That clip reflects badly on you. It's a poorly made clip, and you show this to an international audience. I have no idea who made this for you. You may have asked a contractor to make it for you, or you made this in-house, but you cannot show that to people. It's the content that matters. Now, whether it's made in-house or made by contractor, that's not the point. So we will do better. Professor William Wong. The Bureau sounded passive in the discussion. I want to return to my earlier question. We support interinstitutional, interdisciplinary programs. We embrace the idea of letting students from one university to take classes at another university. We're promoting the GPA integration. Why not let students from one campus of a university to take classes on another campus of the same university? We don't have visas allowing students from one campus to take classes for maybe half a day per week on a different campus. We don't have that now because that's not possible. Now, I turn to universities of applied sciences. The undersecretary told us it's up to universities. That's wrong. We need a higher level strategy. We want talent with practical skills. We need those universities to meet certain targets. That should be part of our plan. Now I turn to the education expos. Academic expos or conferences also matter. Yes, universities host those events, but take a look at Singapore. They set aside a pot of money specifically for university professors to apply for. Universities apply for the money to get other scholars elsewhere to take part in an event. It's not for universities to organize the events. Instead, the professors there can apply for the money and organize events. Undersecretary, I'll take the first two questions on organizing academic events and where the UGC can come in. Now, the point about UGC, my colleague from the UGC can take that question. On universities with two campuses, one in Hong Kong, the other in the mainland, the practice varies from one university to the next. 4 universities in Hong Kong have another campus in the GPA's mainland cities. Back in 2005, the Hong Kong Baptist University set up a satellite campus with a tertiary institution in Zhuhai. The practice varies from one university to the next as to what they do with their mainland campus. A mainland campus fosters exchanges at different levels. CUHK also has an initiative. Students may take classes in Shenzhen for one semester and then in Hong Kong for another term. So that's a new approach. The member wondered if students can take classes in Shenzhen for half of the day and then in Hong Kong for the rest of the day. Now we can find out more about this. Some universities offer shuttle transport now. Exchanges will happen and the experience will get smoother in the future. Now, on the other point, it's up to universities to decide whether they want to set up a mainland campus. If those universities are so-minded, then for the government, we can consider what kind of support we can give. The government expressed support for the universities that have set up their mainland campus. Now, at the joint conference mechanism between Guangdong and Hong Kong, and also with the Ministry of Education, the HKSL government played its part. Now, let's take the HKMU. It's the first UAS. Maybe the university wants to start with a local focus before setting up a satellite campus. Before the HAMU became a UAS, the institution explored the idea of setting up a mainland campus. We remain in touch with universities about this point. On the third point, now just one comment. The HAMU has now become a UAS. We can talk to the UAS about its plans. But for future applicants, why can we not make that target a requirement for aspiring UASs?
Undersecretary, as announced earlier, we have criteria on how an institution can become a university of applied sciences. There are technical requirements for the institutions, whether they have to set up a mainland campus. This is not a requirement. I think these are two separate issues. If an institution is to become a university of applied sciences, if they have or want to set up a mainland campus, they may do so in future, but the focus of universities of applied sciences would be to develop applied sciences, and I think we should maintain that focus. Well, let me say this, Professor William Wong, maybe you can request to speak for the third round because we have a member that has yet to speak for the first round. We will now have a member speaking for the first round, Dr. Starry Lee. Thank you, Chair. I support Hong Kong to become an international education hub, and now we have an even higher order. We need to tie in with the resolution adopted in the third plenary session of the 20th CPC Central Committee. The concept of an international education hub was first announced last year, and we have in this year the policy address as well as the resolution adopted in the third plenary session that we are to develop Hong Kong into an international education hub as well as an international hub for high caliber talents. How are we actually going to go about doing this? Thank you. Undersecretary, apart from what is said in the resolution of the third plenary session of the 20th CPC Central Committee in last month's conference of nationwide education, we have been talking about how we are to develop Hong Kong into an international education hub, thereby making contributions to the country in the development of education. In the policy address, there are many different initiatives in relation to Hong Kong's development into an international education hub, as well as establish a study in Hong Kong brand. We will host more expos as well as conferences. We will also enhance promotion of the Belt and Road Scholarship. Many members have also expressed concern about the provision of hostel facilities today, and we agree we need to provide more hostel facilities in order to attract more non-local students to come to Hong Kong. There have been concerns, and indeed we note this, that the lack of hostel places is a bottleneck because we have increased the number of staff or scholars from 2,048 to 2,486. So that really demonstrates how we have been quite successful in recruiting overseas scholars. With the increase in number of non-local students, there should be a greater demand for hostel facilities. That's why in this year's policy address, we are to engage market input to provide more hostel facilities. We will also relax more restrictions and promulgate a pilot scheme next year to have the market convert hotels or other commercial buildings into student hostels. And in fact, the Development Bureau's DPFO Development Projects Facilitation Office will also provide support. Yes, member, follow-up questions. Yes, just a brief follow-up. After the policy address has been announced, it is said that the visa period for Category A talents will be extended to 3 years. So I am concerned that with them extending their visas, if they have failed to submit certain documents, they would lose this eligibility while their children are already admitted in Hong Kong's education system. That can be debilitating. Have you considered, in case of such circumstances, you can still issue student visas to the children so that they will not be impacted by their parents' loss of the relevant status? Well, Undersecretary, I think we have already resolved this issue, right? Correct, Chair. If we're talking about universities on post-secondary education, if the student concerned is over 18, they can continue to study there. Well, I'm not talking about university students. I'm talking about primary and secondary school students. Right. They are studying in Hong Kong on a dependent status, on a particular dependent visa, and that is attached to the status of their parents. If their parents cannot renew their visas, that is, if their parents can no longer stay in Hong Kong, the children unfortunately would have to leave Hong Kong as well. But we have been working with the primary and secondary school sector. We have been maintaining communication with the sector in the sense that the schools are aware of the dependent status of students. They're aware of when renewals would have to be made, and they will communicate with parents in advance to make sure there is smooth transition. Well, I think you should look into dissemination of information on a government level, because you're talking about school to parent communication. I think it's better if you can make clear in terms of policies. Well, I think for the final year of high school, secondary 6, they can have some sort of arrangements that can deal with this. For other grades, they do not have such arrangements. It is exactly as I said. Children may have school suspended because of their parents' loss of relevant status. It is not good for our initiative to become an international hub for high caliber talents. Well, I think taking another perspective, if they are coming with their parents, they are cared for by their parents. If the parents have to leave Hong Kong, if we make the child stay in Hong Kong, the child may not receive proper care. But of course, this is going from the perspective of the child. And let me say this, if the children are able to study in Hong Kong because of a manpower initiative that we have, if they do not meet the relevant criteria, they should leave. Well, I think it is I understand why they would have to leave, but then I think there should be arrangements to ensure a smooth transition for the children. Thank you. Thank you. It's now my turn to speak. The Deputy Secretary General of the UGC talked about initiatives to promote the education system of Hong Kong and some provision of hostel facilities. I want to ask what the government plays, what is the role that the government plays in relation to coordination? Well, are you talking about academic qualifications recognition? No, I'm talking about what Mr. Leung said about roadshows being held overseas. He also mentioned something about the provision of hostel facilities. So I want to ask what role the Education Bureau plays in terms of coordination amongst all these initiatives. Thank you. Well, thank you, Chair. With publicity work, we have always attached great importance to such initiatives. And for this year, we have several conferences that we attended in Australia, the US, and France. We have attended the expos and conferences, and the delegation was often led by the Secretary for Education, and she was accompanied by various representatives from tertiary institutions. With the HUCOM SEI, we have been liaising with the standing committees to see how we can promote Hong Kong even better. With the Education Bureau and UGC collaborating closely on this, we have been working with the standing committee to flesh out the details on publicity initiatives. And we are talking about something like Hong Kong Inc. organizations. We have been working very closely with various institutions. In fact, we also have participated in the Digital Education Conference. We have also participated in the ASEAN Education Conference in August. We have taken representatives from tertiary institutions with us. And on Tuesday, we also have another conference in Beijing, which the secretary would attend. These are all very important in our development into an international education hub. We have also some overseas publicity work done in the past year. We have seen quite a number of publicity initiatives. Before, on the part of the Education Bureau, we did not participate as much. Now we seize the opportunities to take part in different expos and conferences in different places in the world in order to enhance communications and consolidate our status as an international education hub. Ms. Lin Kwok, excuse me. I just choked on my spit. Excuse me. We talked earlier about DSE. Let me say something. On the internationalization of DSE, I think we can think about how we can make DSE more internationalized. Also, if we are to make Hong Kong into an international education hub, we really need to engage the tertiary institutions. We see in different parts of the world they would have international tournaments. For example, the MIT, they have some computer science tournaments in Switzerland. We also have some secondary students participate in the tournament. We also have other tournaments in fintech in Canada or elsewhere. We also have an international youth science competition. And the There is also a local university that has recently hosted a tournament for secondary students, but we do not host a number of them. We should try to attract more of the elites in senior secondary schools by hosting these world-class tournaments, because they would come here and then we can attract them to come here. In fact, we can do something like what MIT does. If they win a tournament, it will count towards their eligibility to be admitted to MIT. So can we do something similar? Can we host more world-class tournaments in Hong Kong instead of only having Hong Kong students go to the other tournaments overseas?
Undersecretary. Now, on promoting HKDSE overseas, we need different forms of support. We need teachers training. We need the conditions for teachers in Belt and Road countries that can teach the DSE syllabus. This will require long-term studies. So at this point, our focus is on tertiary education. Ms. Kwok mentioned holding international competitions. That's a good idea. The policy address this year proposes holding international conferences and exhibitions. As Ms. Kwok says, we can do competitions, summer camps. We can bring in students from different parts of the world. These students can experience our education system. Those students can be here in person to learn about our universities. Now, we should create such opportunities. Now, when you have a competition for secondary students, those students who take part may consider Hong Kong's universities. I know some of our local universities do hold summer programs for gifted students. We can do more for sure. There are also competitions open to university students. It's just like the World Skills Competition. Our tertiary students took part in the competition in France this year. If those students take part in competitions in Hong Kong, they may consider postgraduate programs in Hong Kong. These programs are not expensive and they can produce results. We have to talk to universities about the kind of competitions they hold. We can think about what we can create as a brand for Hong Kong. It would be tough to come up with an entirely new competition. So we can start thinking about the existing competitions, matches that are held on a touring basis around the world. Some years ago, we did the Mathematical Olympiad held at the HKUST. That was for top achievers in mathematics. So where appropriate, we can try to have those events held in Hong Kong. Professor William Wong. I was looking for something, but that came in the reply about competitions. Other places are aggressive in holding large-scale academic conferences. I was delighted to hear that the government would be making an effort in this area. Elsewhere, those places make it clear they encourage the holding of such events, they welcome, they invite ideas. Our problem here is that here people wonder whether they should go to the ITIB or the EDB. People are confused. So the government needs to make things clearer. We are of one mind on this matter. We need a standardized approach. Now, I turn to a suggestion. The government kept saying it's up to each UAS. But at the Committee on Education, Technology and Talent, we have to discuss this matter. We have a labor shortage in the GBA. We have a need for such talent in Hong Kong. So let's do what's warranted in Hong Kong at the moment. So UAS or any university trying to become a UAS should meet those requirements. So that's a suggestion. Can the Undersecretary offer a brief reply? On Professor Wong's first point, if members have events in mind they want to hold, they can let us know. It's okay for them to approach the EDB or the ITIB. Either way works. It depends on the nature of the event. If the event has to do with universities, members are welcome to let us know. There are different channels for collaboration. Setting up a mainland campus is one of the options. The Vocational Training Council, for example, it's working on VPET, Vocational and Professional Training and Education. The VTC has mainland offices. Over the years, the VTC has different forms of tie-ups with the mainland. It doesn't have a mainland campus, but that serves the purpose the member has in mind. We all of one mind in terms of where we want to be. We work with the mainland in nurturing talent. So let's work together on that. Thank you. So, Mr. Leung, can we hold off for a moment? I have to extend the meeting for 15 minutes. So over to you, Mr. Louis Leung. So can you hold for a second, Professor Wong? Thank you. Now, on holding large-scale events and exhibitions, the UGC supports the holding of such events. The resources go into 4 areas. First, we have recurrent expenditures for universities over trienniums, $6 billion or so. Events vary in size and attendance. But this is not what the member is looking for, I believe. Now, we have dedicated funds. We've seen something in recent years. Universities pursue special projects. They hold international conferences. Last year, now we had a fund on science and technology. AI is making an impact on education. So some universities held seminars on the impact of AI on education. So international seminars and conferences were held. We got international visitors. Now, the third area, there are 4 platforms. Now, we have different university alliances between universities in Hong Kong and their peers in Beijing, Shanghai, and Jiangsu. These are some regional tie-ups for universities to compare notes. Now, the 4th area is a mechanism at the UGC. For very large-scale events, universities can put forward a proposal. we actively consider such proposals, whether they are about funding or policy support, as long as those proposals help enhance Hong Kong's status. We granted funding for individual projects. Those are for large-scale projects or joint initiatives involving several universities. We do have an existing mechanism for that. We're looking at not just holding events. Overseas visitors haven't had many chances to visit Hong Kong in recent years, but when they do come here, they see Hong Kong for themselves. And that's different from what they've heard from the media. So this is somewhere we can do more on. So the UGC will be working with the 8 universities and the EDB on this front. Now there's another panel waiting to hold this event. So we have done 3 rounds of questioning. So if you have further questions, let's save them for the next meeting. Any other business? No other business. So that's the meeting adjourned. Thank you.